I would like to convene the Cumberland School Committee meeting. I'd like to call it to order and at 7:32 p.m. Before we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like to ask us to rise for the passing of two students this week in the district. The first was Joshua Collette, and the second was Aiden Nyberg. So I'd ask us to first rise for a moment of silence. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Pleasure of the committee. Motion by Mr. Mutter. Second by Mr. DeMonica and Mrs. Teal. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the student government report, student activities. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jake Fitzgerald.
I'm Gabby Sumlum.
And I am the junior class vice president and co-chairman to community and environment. And this month of April, in the past, we have done Foreign Language Week. And the week of March 7th to 11th, the students celebrated Foreign Language Week with class competitions and daily activities. The Pennies for Patients Drive raised $3,519. The money was donated to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and the top 3 winning advisories received an Olive Garden luncheon for raising the most money.
We had the peanut butter drive from March 1st to March 31st, and we collected peanut butter for the Rhode Island Food Bank, and every student that brought in a jar of peanut butter received 1 Clipper Cash. We also had Spring Fling, which was April 5th. It was from 6 to 10, and it was very successful, and the students had a great time. We had the blood drive, and that was students and faculty donated 54 plants of blood to the Rhode Island Food Bank. Blood bank.
Hopefully not the food bank. Upcoming events we have, May 17th, we have the junior prom, which will be held on May 4th at Kirkbride from 6 to 10 p.m. And the prom will follow a nautical theme. And on May 24th, students from each class are encouraged to run for class offices. Open positions are president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. Elections will be held on May 24th during the informational period. That's all for the month of April. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go on, one of the items on the agenda this evening, old business, we have a discussion and or vote to approve school start end schedule. We're going to have it just be a discussion this evening. There'll be no vote taken. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, approval of minutes for special meeting 3/26/2013, regular meeting 4/11/2013, executive session 4/3/2013, and executive session 4/11/2013. Pleasure of the committee. Motion by Mr. DeMonica to approve the consent agenda. Second by Mrs. Teal. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Chair votes yes. That motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the report out of executive session meeting 4/11/2013. The executive session vote, there were no votes taken. I need a vote to seal the minutes of the executive session. Motion by Mr. Mutter. Second by Mrs. Teal. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? Chair votes yes. That motion carries 7-0. Next item is report of executive session meeting on 4/25/2013. Student hearing decision. There was no hearing and there was no executive session vote. I need a vote to seal the minutes of the executive session. Motion by Mr. Fiorello, second by Mr. Mutter. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? Chair votes yes. That motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report, recognition of achievements. Dr. Thornton.
Good evening. We have some folks next to be recognized. First, if I could have Laura Benjamin come up to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you that don't know Ms. Benjamin, she is a 5th grade teacher at Cumberland Elementary School. Laura Benjamin is one of 200 teachers nationwide and only one of 3 in Rhode Island to be accepted into the Phil Mickelson Exxon Teachers Academy. Laura will be spending a week in New Jersey learning new ways to teach science and math. Teachers will take part in a unique learning experience that will deepen understanding of mathematics and science content at grades 3 and 5 in the areas of data and statistics, measurement, and force and motion. It will build expertise in facilitating student learning through problem solving and inquiry, demonstrate the interconnections between mathematics and science that support and enhance student learning, provide an understanding of how children learn and how to translate that knowledge to classroom instruction, increase knowledge and the use of instructional resources to support student learning, and encourage school teams to network with other professionals in mathematics and science education. Please join me in congratulating Laura Benjamin for this.
And next, can I have Laura Valentine and Christine Norton come forward, please? I have the great pleasure to speak to these two folks about some work they did with an award, a CarMax award for $7,500 donated to the B.F. Norton Library. These folks spent a lot of time and hard work applying for a grant. They got the grant. If you've been down to BF, it's truly an amazing library and getting better each and every day. So just thank you so much for your hard work. First, to Laura Valentine. Thank you. Next, Carolyn Dooley, please. If you could please come up, and Dr. Masterson.
So you're going to hear a presentation tonight concerning STEM to STEAM, which is a program that we began between the 2 middle schools. There was a partnership between North Cumberland and Joseph L. McCourt Middle School. And when we talked to Dr. Thorne, we would like to recognize the person who really spearheaded this project was Mrs. Dooley, who is also our first ever Fall Crystal Apple Award winner at Joseph L. McCourt Middle School. So congratulate Mrs. Dooley and all the support she gathers for every project that she gets started. So congratulations.
Next item on the agenda is the Joseph L. McCourt Middle School presentation, STEM to STEAM. Dr. Masterson, Mrs. Dooley.
Actually, it's Mrs. Dooley and the students.
Perfect, thank you.
Now I think I'll be emailing Laura Benjamin pretty soon because she's going to be another resident expert on science and technology very shortly here. So I think we'll be looking at bringing this program down to the elementary level before we know it. So we have STEM to STEAM. We had a McNorth Day back in early part of March. So push this button first. There we go. So what is STEM? It is science, technology, engineering, and math. And I'm just curious in the room, how many people are familiar with this term? I was hoping your hand would go up. Good? Good. All right. A lot of schools in the country are STEM schools, including here in Rhode Island. Okay, STEM roots began back in 2009. Obama launched the Educate to Innovate campaign for American students to move those students who are in the middle to the top of the pack in science and math over the next decade. So what is STEAM? Is anybody, no McCourt kids can raise their hand. Anybody know what STEAM is? We've got a few kids? Good, good. A few people. Science, technology, engineering, and art and math. That came out of the Rhode Island School of Design. Dr. Maida, who's the president of RISD, he's also a MIT graduate. He championed STEM to STEAM by bringing it to the U.S. Congress. And as recently as January 28th, 2013, they now have a congressional STEAM caucus to change the vocabulary of education to recognize the benefits of both the arts and sciences and how these intersections will benefit our country's future generations. We've already got a school up in Andover, Massachusetts, who has implemented the STEAM program. So why do our students need STEM to STEAM? Well, these workshops that we designed clearly connected art to science, technology, engineering, and math to enhance their critical thinking and bring it back into the classroom. We don't want to be learning in a vacuum, so it wasn't that we brought people in to teach these workshops and then go away and that's it. And I think you'll hear from the students they want more. So we had 6 workshops, and we got tremendous support from the Rhode Island School of Design. We had a museum educator, Mariani Lefis-Tetness, who taught the Art to Science, Up Close to Nature and Picturing Nature workshops. Then we had Dr. John Chamberlain, who runs the MAT program for art educators. Art to Math, Part to Whole was his workshop. We had Arts to Technology, Lights, Camera, Action by our very own Joanne Vecchio, who has Second Stage Studio over on Angel Road here in Cumberland. Then we brought in Chris Beauregard of Trimark Plastics, who's an engineer and an avid sailor who builds boats. And he brought in art to engineering, what floats your boat. And the kids did what was similar to a rain gutter regatta. I don't know if anybody's ever done that with scouting. That was a huge hit. They're big in the Bristol Yacht Club and brought support for that program. And then we brought in engineering art, creating sculptures using space frames. That was done by Major Cullen Jones from the United States Military Academy at West Point. They have a tremendous STEM program, and he came down for the day. We also brought in student mentors. Each student mentor was a high school student who had graduated from a STEM program or a leadership program. We had a graduate from the Brown University STEM program called Artemis, which is a free STEM program all summer long for girls, to encourage girls to go into the engineering field. We had a graduate of the West Point Middle School STEM program, which is a residential program for just about under a week. And then we had some graduates from the Student Leadership Training Program, which we'll be introducing at McCourt. So about 1 month prior to March, that should be a second, I'm sorry, students received applications. We had been planning this back before Dr. Masterson's time, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate Dr. Masterson's support of this program. I actually started with Dr. Anderson, but Dr. Masterson embraced the idea, supported the idea, so back in December we started the planning to roll this out. Everybody was on board. We had the Rhode Island Art Education Association help us plan this. Mr. Mitchell came, which was wonderful, and we had some wonderful leadership from across the state supporting this effort in Cumberland. So once we got everything squared away, started 1 month out before March 2nd, the students went through the application process. They selected their 2 workshops. Then they were notified that they had been accepted to the program with confirmation of their workshops. So we had our McNorth Day. I can't tell you what a thrill it was to see my good friends and colleagues working side by side. And the students would come in, they'd get a name tag. We ran this like a professional conference, a professional workshop. They came in, they got their name tag, they checked in, then they went to the cafeteria where they did energizers with the high school mentors to get them awake, because remember, this is a Saturday. These kids came on a Saturday. This program ran from like 9 to 2. And these kids volunteered their time, and we also had volunteers in the community doing this all-day program where it wasn't a 3-day weekend, but they showed up, they were ready to go. By the time we had our keynote speaker, they were ready. Our guest keynote speaker was Ms. Josephine Devonboo. She's a dual degree student in her 5th year. She is majoring in painting at RISD and neuroscience at Brown University, so we felt she was the perfect candidate to volunteer her time, again, to inspire the students about what she is doing in that field. So this is what the day looked like. We felt it was important to keep the kids carved up with snacks, nutritious snacks from our PTOs, and generous support from the Stop and Shop. And our administrators fed us a light lunch of pizza and water at the end. And the students received their certificates at their schools so they could be recognized in front of their peers. So this is what it looked like, and Mrs. Coughlin tweeted this out the day of the conference. This is what the Up Close to Nature and Picturing Nature workshops look like with Ms. Leffa Stepnis from the RISD Art Museum. Students were able to experience specimens from the nature lab that Ms. Leffa Stepnis brought in, and she taught them about scientific illustration. I don't want to talk too much because the students are going to be talking about their experience specifically. Picturing nature would talk about how when you look at art, you're looking at it from a scientist's point of view and looking at glacial movement, not just the beautiful colors in the landscape. Then we had Art to Map from Dr. John Chamberlain, who showed the students how everything in architecture and around us, so many things rather, are built on a grid. So they used marbleizing paper techniques, showing how oil resists water to create pattern or texture. Then they used those to create quilt type patterns. Then we had art to technology. Again, I don't want to say too much. Morgan, what are they doing there?
We're acting like snow.
You're acting like snow. And shoveling snow?
Yes.
Art to engineering. What floats your boat? That's what a rain gutter regatta looks like. Students built their own boats and tested them on the high seas of a rain gutter and competed in racing them. So they got to get an experience with physics. Engineering art, creating sculptures using space frames from West Point. Major Colin Jones came in. All of these professors who came in brought all of their own supplies. Okay, so we're going to leave that slide, and then we're going to start hearing from our students. And our first student is Savannah Stephen.
When I signed up for the STEM to STEAM program, one of the activities I chose was designing a geodesic space frame, which we did in the workshop with Major Colin Jones. I chose it because it was clearly one of the more art-based programs, and my interest in art is the reason why I signed up. Art is very important to me, and when it can be applied to something as essential as engineering, it's great. The instructor was from the United States Military Academy at West Point, New York, and he was very knowledgeable on the subjects and made it interesting. I found the class entertaining as well as informative. You can relate better to both technology and math when applying art to it. It makes it so much easier to understand. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sarah Bonifacio, grade 8.
I think STEM to STEAM was a very beneficial program. A few students from high school came and got us all going by having us do some stretches and techniques to wake us up. Next, a student from RISD and Brown University talked to us about herself and how her art is important to her. She spoke about her own art and what she does at her school. Students got to pick their activities and that they would enjoy that day. All the activities were connected to art with either science, technology, engineering, or math. One of the activities I chose was called The Changing State. There was a museum educator from RISD who was in charge of it. She brought in prints of different paintings that were types of landscapes and different scenes. We talked about different sounds that we thought we would hear in one of the paintings that we showed us. We each got to pick one painting that we liked and paint an area of it where I thought the main focus of it was. I enjoyed that activity very much because I like talking together as a group and describing what we saw in the different paintings. Also, I like thinking about the different sounds that would be in the paintings because although we can't hear them, you can imagine the sounds that they would come from in part of nature. I really enjoyed the whole STEM to STEAM program, and I hope to have the opportunity to do it again. It is a great way to get kids interested and more involved in art.
Our next speaker is Morgan Wang, who's going to talk about arts to science, up close to nature, and then she's got her technology connection. She wanted to do her own slides.
STEM to STEAM is a great opportunity for the middle schoolers to experience art and science, technology, engineering, and math. It's great to have a wide variety of knowledge in each of those subjects to get an understanding of it, like the workshop Up Close to Nature. It helps to bring the science and observations of the organic specimens. What we did in Up Close to Nature was look at specimens given to us. We talked about minerals, trees, details, and patterns in color. We were understanding how scientists make drawn or written observations using their knowledge, words, and sights. After that, we got resource papers to carry on with the topic. STEM to STEAM kids get interested by adding arts to STEM. The arts include drama, dance, theater, singing, painting, drawing, and sculpture. All of these things were tied in with subjects like science, technology, engineering, and math. STEM to STEAM is important to us students because it gives us an understanding in science, technology, engineering, now art, and lastly math. STEM to STEAM, the difference. Adding the art to it was a great general way to get the program started with other kids interested in art. The benefits of the program for students was to benefit themselves with great opportunities to have mentors and professors from colleges teach us. It's an amazing, fun way to learn more about science, technology, engineering, and math with arts. The program brought the family together. Also, by doing the program, you meet other kids who share the same passion that you do with the subjects offered. Just one word. One word to describe this program is just plain and simple, but gets the meaning of what it's all about. That one word can tell you that STEAMers are like one big happy family, learning more about the curriculum. The support we got from advisors, teachers, and professors was very appreciated. Thank you to all with one word to describe the program. One word is brilliant.
Marty brought one of her samples. Do you want to hand it up to the school committee and they can take a look at it? Thank you, Morgan. Our next student to give her response to STEM to STEAM is Faith DeMarco on Arts to Technology, Lights, Camera, Action.
Good evening. When I did the STEM to STEAM program on March 2nd, my first choice was the Art to Technology Lights, Camera, Action session. This particular session had many connections to art and technology. For example, every aspect of theater is art. Every aspect of theater is art, technology, or both. In the beginning, Mrs. Joanne Vecchio asked us how we could act out various things such as a lead. Some kids improv'd it, which is acting, and acting in itself is an art. Most of the technology aspects that we learned through the session were the importance of things such as lighting, music, microphones, etc. For example, lighting can completely make a scene. It can evoke the appropriate mood, show the time of day, location, and so much more. I really like this program because I am a major theater passionate person, and I was able to learn many important aspects of it.
Our next STEAmer is Kyle Williams, Arts to Engineering, What Floats Your Boat?
Hi, my name is Kyle Williams. I'm a 6th grader at McCord Middle School, and I participated in the last STEM to STEAM program in February of this year. It was a great opportunity for me to learn new things and have fun with science and engineering. At the workshops I went to, I learned about aerodynamics, which help cars, planes, and boats move faster and have better fuel efficiency. Built a boat out of foam that I raced, and built tetrahedrons, structures out of gumdrops and toothpicks as models, then made larger models using clay and popsicle sticks. It was really cool to learn how engineers build things and make changes to make things better and faster. After going to STEM to STEAM program, I started to think about what I may do for a career someday, and I am excited about learning more about science, math, and engineering. The STEM to STEAM program gave me an amazing experience to learn new things. I hope this program is here in Cumberland and here for me and other students to enjoy.
One thing I want to mention about Kyle is he took the next step and he wrote his application to apply to the West Point STEM program. And at this time, I think it's the best time to say he was ready to go, and they canceled the program due to funding cuts. So not only did that affect him, but it affected kids across the nation doing that. And I have to also mention that the art to engineering space frames that Major Kelling was scheduled to come and perform for us. When I heard about the budget cuts, I quickly emailed West Point to find out if they were still coming, and they said yes, they got a donor. So what happened was Major Cullen got up at 3 o'clock, wasn't it? Drove to Cumberland, did 2 workshops with our kids, spent the whole day with us, turned around to go back, and I said, can we buy that cup of chowder? And he said, no, I have cadets waiting for me, so I have to get back to help them. So he did this all in one day. But he was dedicated to us and kept his word and came and did the program, so I just wanted to mention that. How fortunate we are to get that sort of quality and dedication brought to our own back door. So we encourage Kyle to apply, and all other middle school students that they fund it next year. He still has 2 more years. Our next STEAmer is Arts to Engineering, Space Frames and Float Your Boat, Alex Borges.
Good evening. My name is Alex Borges, and I'm an 8th grader at McCord Middle School. I attended the What Floats Your Boat creating space frame sessions. I really enjoyed these sessions because I like hands-on activities and I learned what engineers do. This might be a career for me to explore in the future. The only thing that I was not thrilled about were the warm-up activities. They were a bit childish. Overall, I really enjoyed STEM to STEAM and I hope to participate in it again.
We encourage honesty in the art room, so I'll take the hit. I just want to read what Eloisa Tibaldi wrote. She is at tonight's induction ceremony for the Junior Honor Society. So she prepared her notes and she said she enjoyed the Arts to Technology workshop. She learned cool techniques. The teacher was very exciting to listen to. He taught me many things about action. She liked learning how to make someone look dead and lighting techniques and jobs behind the curtains. And she would love to be able to do a short play or do a play read-through. And she said she would come to one of these events each month if she could participate. The program was that fun. And our last steamer is Nick Dwar, grade 8, Arts to Engineering, Space Frames, and Float.
Good evening. I had a very interesting STEAM experience. Though I already knew a lot about what there is to know about buoyancy, space frames, and the general creative process, I was surprised to find out that the military is designing ways to improve architecture and that it takes so much work to design a boat. I'm sure other people would enjoy the experience if they had the chance. I don't think that students should be limited by what grades they get in school, because as we all know, some students do not do well in the classroom. Because not all students perform well in the school, but sometimes they find careers and experiences they do out of school. So there shouldn't be so much as a grade limit. An opportunity can be found everywhere, for a career, a life, anywhere.
Okay, can we go back to the outcomes slide? So I appreciate all of the students who came here tonight, and I totally understand if you need to go, because I know we have a lot of scrapbooks that are due in English class, and we've got some Boy Scout meetings, so we'll wrap up in a few minutes, so please excuse our students because they do have schoolwork to do, and it is a school night. So outcomes. The students got to experience the application process, and just a quick poll, how many of you would go through an application process again if an opportunity like this came about? Raise your hands. Okay, so we now have brave students who are willing to take that on, which I think is a huge thing for a middle schooler. Students had a McNorth Day. I think you heard the students really enjoyed getting together with North and building friendships, especially with so many 8th graders. They now have a friend from North when they get up to the high school. One of the things we also talked about and observed was there were high expectations with no pressure of grades. They felt that was very important, encouraged mistakes with no pressure of any sort of penalty. It was a hands-on kinesthetic educational experience that was amazing to see when you have outside people, when you have people who are professors, museum educators. They would come in and rearrange the classrooms, which we took pictures of, to learn from their efficiency. It was just amazing to see them adapt to their environment. It gave them exposure to STEM to STEAM programs, as well as leader programs outside of the high school via the high school mentors. All of the high school mentors had their names on their name tags, as well as where they went to their STEM program or their leadership program. And the students were told at the beginning of the day, ask the mentors about their programs. So we've already got a student scheduled from one of the leadership programs, a high school mentor, to come in and pursue exposure to the leadership opportunities. they had exposure to higher ed and professional careers. These are people who are either working in their field or working at the college level at very fine institutions. And it was great to take away that intimidation. I think that everybody felt that it was a welcoming, positive environment to learn in. They returned to the classroom with applied knowledge. I can tell you from my experience when I started my tessellations unit, where I connect art to math, immediately I had a student who made the connection to Professor Chamberlain's workshop on using grids. So we're not learning things in a vacuum. So I have our budget, which has a zero balance. I can ask some students to bring these up to the school committee. Just due to logistics, a lot of the burden came on McCourt. For instance, I maybe used a total of 5 reams of paper to get all of the promotional information, which by the way goes back to February. We brought in Arthur Landry from the school committee, and he did a family STEM program talking about the fiscal cliff. So this wasn't just a one-day thing. We tried to encourage other opportunities at McCourt. The PTO donated snacks in between workshops, and that was $65 with $35 donated by Stop and Shop. And Lynn Stephen asked me to plug Matthew Lindley, the store manager at Stop and Shop, who was very generous with our school and very supportive. Pizza came from the Joseph Fort Middle School administrators. Our t-shirts that we're wearing for students who replied to our survey, they got t-shirts. That was our hook. Residential properties, defaults, and impact printers donated all of the funds for that. And I created the art so that we didn't have an art fee. And then we had some certificates that we used for the presenters and the high school mentors. But I should note that I can't put a price on the amount of time that the presenters put into their workshops. I mean, when you talk about someone who drives 4 hours, does all of that in one day, I don't know how to put a price on that. I'm sure you could break it down, but I think you understand the value, that how much we appreciate that, and the hard work that RISD put into the program, as well as the Bristol Yacht Club and Trimark with the Float Your Boat. And Joanne Vecchio had to give up her entire day. She's her peak day for voice lessons and play rehearsals. We did have a $75 gift card donated to us by the Rhode Island Art Education Association. So we did this for free. And it just goes to show you what a community can do when you pull together. But I don't think we can go to the well too much more. I think we need to do more grant writing, which I do a lot of, but I'm finding, and I'm very discouraged. I think a lot of people in this room, I like to write grants. They're not only have the funds dried up, grants don't exist anymore for the arts. Artreach, which is run by Rhode Island Art Education Association, I've done that for 4 years. It doesn't exist anymore, it just totally dried up. Arts and Academics didn't award as many grants this year, so I think that if we embrace STEM and STEAM, and STEAM really takes hold at the congressional level, perhaps that would be a way for our school district to get funds to do these sorts of things. In talking with my colleagues who observed the day, some feel intimidated about art, as do I, on things like math, and we have a dialogue going. So we find we don't have the time to dialogue. So we've had some discussion about perhaps team teaching, doing more interdisciplinary, solid, rich lessons. But to find the time to plan that, how do we do that? I think it's opened up a fantastic dialogue that I hope that we'll be able to build on. I think we've started something. So that's really all I have right now. I'm exploring different models. I went to Thomas Jefferson High School down in Fairfax, Virginia for my break because I'm from Virginia. It's a science and technology school, and that's all it is. It's not a STEAM school, it's science and technology, but they do a lot of interdisciplinary things with that. But I think we're looking at something bigger to create elegant solutions to our problems when we present them in the classrooms. I think that's everything. Are there any questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Mrs. Dooley? So I have a couple questions, because my background is more STEM than STEAM.
Good.
But I have a question for the students. So just for the show of hands, or if you have something that you want to say and comment on, how many of you kind of went into this thinking, this might not be that interesting, and came out saying, wow, I didn't know I could put all of these pieces together? Really? And do you think that moving forward, you'd want to take more classes in some of those areas, like the science or the math or the art or the blending of the two? Yeah. Do you think, Mrs. Dooley, you talk, it sounds like you want to replicate this or do it again?
I would like to do it. I would like to replicate it, not just as a day, but in talking with my colleagues. And we have Keith Colwell here, and I really appreciate all the support that he's given us up at North. He and I have been talking about how do we do this? How do we get this into the curriculum? So I think it's great that we have just the two middle schools, because I think it's easier for us. I think it's easier than doing it at an elementary level. So the trick is to find the time and to really sit down and figure out how are we going to do this. We don't get the chance to observe outside of our department. And every time you talk to a teacher who's able to sit in by accident for some reason, all of a sudden they're learning and appreciating what you do, and they are able better to connect in their subject. And I think there's a lot to be said for just, we're doing the walkthroughs, the eye walkthroughs, but we're looking at different things than content. And I think if you're going to be doing this sort of interdisciplinary connection, you need to be looking at the content of what your colleagues are teaching. And when I do that, when I do get the chance to sit in, I'm floored at the expertise that the school district has. It's there, we just have to make those connections. So I think that we've given new meaning to Rhode Island Steamers through this program. It's not just a clam.
Really more than a clam. So MIT has something called Splash, and they run it in November, and it's a weekend, and it's for middle school and high school students. It occurs in November. You have to sign up, I think sometime in October, but I think it's $10 or $20 for the weekend. But it offers you opportunities from math through how to make chocolate. It's run by all the graduate students, do it as part of their school-based activities. Kids can launch rockets to make those geodesic hats with the sugar cubes and all that stuff. So it's much larger scale, but I certainly think that there's, I've always wanted to do that here. So this really is very energizing for me.
I'll be emailing you too.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, definitely.
Good.
Thank you very much, everyone. It was
Thank you.
really enriching.
We have t-shirts for the superintendent and the assistant superintendent. If you don't know, I also have to thank my partner in crime. Luann Broadmeadow is the co-president of the art club that we established at McCourt, and she's been a huge help, and just want to make sure that she gets
Thank you. Keep up the good work. Chairperson's report. I just wanted to acknowledge Councilor Murray's here this evening. Oh, there he is. Thank you for joining us. Next item on the agenda is comments from the public. Would anyone in the public like to speak? Hearing none. Reports of standing committees. Payment of bills. Mr. Potter?
Madam Chair, there are no payment of bills this evening.
Thank you. And I think the next item is you. Fiscal Management Subcommittee update, Mr. Potter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Fiscal Management met Tuesday the 23rd. We did discuss the couple items that are on the docket this evening with the school start and end schedule and the NVS swimming club pool proposal. I can update that now, or we can wait till they come up with the documents. Your preference, Madam Chair.
We can certainly do it now.
The Fiscal Management Subcommittee withdrew the NVS swimming club proposal as CHS due to the fact that it has been determined that it needs to go out to bid. And with respect to the school start and end schedule, it did, at that meeting, pass 2-1 at Fiscal Management. I would say as a disclaimer at that time, I led the charge for that approval in the vote of 2-1. Mr. Fiorello in the negative. There were some factors at that time that I should have been aware of what was not at the time of that vote. So subsequently, I've voiced those to the chair, and I think she will be handling some discussion of another meeting subsequently this evening. But at that time, it was passed the Fiscal Management 2-1. The current proposal in front of the committee is a 3-bus addition to the budget at a cost of between $150 and $165, and there would be a budget amendment reducing another expense to make up for that. So, long story short, 2-1. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for the report, Mr. Butter. Next item is Achievement and Communication Subcommittee update. We met on Tuesday, and we had the high school come to talk about Common Core alignment at the ELA level, which includes now a kind of a cross-integration with the different curricular areas to ensure that writing across the curriculum covers many different types of writing styles and requirements. We also heard from Mr. Scott from the math department about the what seems like an endless amount of activities that they are doing in the department to address concerns that we've all had around the alignment of math to Common Core, but in addition, the kneecap scores at that level. He touched briefly on some of the activities that they're doing at the middle school with regard to a grant that they've received for math for students who are struggling, as well as the new AGS math enrichment program at the middle school level. But I think you know, the department needs to be recognized for its effort. It's huge. It's got a big burden in front of it, and I think they are working really hard to do an alignment of that program and assess students properly so that we don't have a situation where we are not making progress. We are finally making progress with students, and we want to recognize the department for those efforts. Thank you. Next item is the Policy and Procedures Subcommittee update. Mrs. Steele.
Thank you. Policy and Procedures met on Tuesday. We discussed 3 policies, one that I'll be bringing before the committee at a later time. We also talked about the high school proficiency-based graduation policy. That's gone back to Dr. Thornton to refine it and slim it down a little bit. And we also talked about the personnel assignment system policy. That policy is in response to RIDE and the BEP, where they want personnel decisions not based solely on seniority, but they need to be based on really the best interests of teaching and learning. So the policy works to address RIDE's concerns and directives, and we'll be bringing that policy forward, I believe, on next Thursday. correct? Are we having a special meeting? Yeah, I believe next Thursday. Thank you. And we'll be meeting the second Tuesday in May. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is the Special Programs Subcommittee update. Mr. Duffy.
Thank you. I'm going to try to do a full recap on from where we started to where we are, and then I'll pass off to Phil to discuss the final models where we are. We did have it on the docket tonight for a vote within the subcommittee as well, but we felt we've been talking a lot in concepts and ideas, and until we really got it fully in writing exactly what it was, we wanted to make sure at that point we got it out so that the community and everyone on the committee could have a full understanding of the pros and cons associated with this. So I'm going to go back a few months just on the action items where we as a subcommittee, the research that we did into this, and then I'll provide you some of the research to where we were. So as a subcommittee, we started with really researching adolescent sleep in the high school and middle school start times and how it relates to student health, safety, learning, and the quality of life of the students in general. We wanted to contact and/or research other districts that have changed start times to gather information about the pros and cons that they've had associated with changing to a later start time at the high school. Looking into that specifically were test scores of districts that had changed, tardiness and attendance, how that was affected by a later change, discipline, and the impact on athletics and clubs at the high school. We held numerous meetings that was on it. We wanted to hold numerous subcommittee meetings and discussion. We reached out to the athletic department to see where the impact would be, where their end line is really for the high school to end. We ended up roughly around the 3:15 time frame. It's the latest we could get the high school out without impacting the sports. Small variations as far as some JV when you get late in the fall, but vast majority of everything would go off without a hitch if the latest we had to come out was 3:15. And then we get into what we've really been dealing with for months now is modeling the bus tier structures. So what I'm going to, before I get into the bus tier structures, because that's really what's driven 90% of this, I want to get into why. This was brought to us as a committee to look into, do we want to do this? Does it make sense to do it, and what are the benefits of doing it? So we did a lot of research, and I'm going to try to sum a bunch of it up for you now. The research shows that getting enough sleep is a biological necessity to students. Is important to good health as eating well and exercising. Teens spend a great portion of each day in school, however they are unable to maximize the learning opportunities afforded by the education system since sleep deprivation impairs their ability to be alert, pay attention, solve problems, cope in stress, and retain information. Contemporary research indicates that all the discipline and time management in the world will not overcome teen biology. Studies consistently show that older teenagers' sleep clocks are set so they fall asleep later and wake up later. Most high schools, however, start before 8 a.m., the worst time to find an alert teen. Given that the primary focus on education is to maximize human potential, then a new task before us is to ensure that the condition in which learning takes place addresses the very biology of our learners. So that was some of the medical research that we did. Does it make sense to have a later start time for teens? And the research that we came across, we were able to find no research that showed that it's a bad thing to have a later start time. Only research that says it's good. So then we looked into who else is doing it and what type of impact they have. According to the National Sleep Foundation, more than 80 school districts around the country have now made the change to start their high schools later. These districts range from large urban school districts such as Minneapolis and Denver to suburban districts such as Jessamine County in central Kentucky. I'll go over some of the school districts and some specifics that they encountered after they changed to a later start time at the high school. In Minneapolis, they performed a study of over 7,000 students and found a significant reduction in dropout rates, less depression among the students, and higher grades overall among the students. In Rhode Island, at St. George's School in Middletown, after implementing a trial to delay school by 30 minutes, the following results were reported. The portion of students reporting at least 8 hours of sleep on school nights jumped from about 16% to almost 55%. Reports of daytime sleepiness dropped substantially from 49% to 20%. First period tardiness dropped by almost half, and students reported having more time to eat a hot, more nutritious breakfast. The results were so impressive that the school made the change permanent. In Nauset High School on the Cape, this was one that was recently done within the last 2 years. After the implementation of an hour later high school start time, they had a 53% drop in the number of failing grades, a 38% decline of D's and F's. The number of days students were suspended for disciplinary reasons plummeted from 166 in the first 2 months of the previous year to 19 days in September and October of the following year. In Kentucky, in Fayette County, teen driver crash rates reduced by 16.5% within the 2 years after the school start time, delayed by 1 hour, while the rest of the state saw an increase in teen crash rates. Jessamine County, Kentucky as well. Since implementing later school starts in 2002, attendance immediately went up, as did scores on standardized tests, which have continued to rise each year. In Wilton, Connecticut, athletic performance improved. Wilton, Connecticut did it quite a few years ago, actually. I think roughly 8 to 10 years ago they did it. Athletic performance improved, and as expected, there was less absenteeism and tardiness, more mental alertness, improved grades, fewer students falling asleep in class. The principal also said students had stronger immune systems and were depressed less after and caused fewer disciplinary problems. Parents reported less confrontation at home and more conversation. Principal also said none of the parents, teachers, or school committee members he spoke with in the community that made changes wanted to go back to their previous schedules, and that the town was getting a very large return for little money. I also reached out. Sharon, Massachusetts did this a couple of years ago. So I reached out to that school committee to see what their results were, and they did a survey, and they said before they implemented it, the survey, the majority of people were against it. That's parents, students across the board. But 1 year after, when they did the survey again, the vast majority of people fully supported it, and they said they would never go back to the way it previously was. And just in conclusion, just a couple of statements that I picked up from different people. Despite the inconveniences involved in district-wide changes, sleep researchers emphasize the need to view sleep like food, exercise, and a pillar of health. So that was the research that we came up with. Should we do this? And I think the research makes it very clear that we should do it. But that we also have to understand the impact of doing that is, and that's where now we'll get into the best models that we were able to come up with over the last few months. While we know it's the right thing to do, can we do it with the things that will be associated with doing it? So now I'll pass it off to Phil to tell us where the bus routes are and the other stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go over the homework. Mike, if you could click on the hyperlink there. And just a few thoughts before we start. First, I'd like to thank Durham. Durham's here tonight. We'll follow in the end. Durham has been fantastic in this process. I have thrown more things at them in a short period of time. I've got a really fast turnaround. So thank you so much for all the work you've done. In terms of the homework and looking at the model, the one thing to keep in mind is the optimum model we talked about in the wintertime was our middle and high at the same time. 8:15 in the L's in that elementary range. Unfortunately, money drives this, as you can imagine. Each bus costs around $52,000, give or take. The models we're looking at, Durham gave us all kinds of flavors for this. And a lot of the models that really made it optimized was an 8 to 10 bus ad, and we simply can't afford that. The model we're looking at right now, our best model, is a 3 bus ad. So throwing out the optimum, where I can't do the middle and the high together, we have this 4-tier structure, if you will. You probably can't read it from your seats, but I'll tell you just what we have here in terms of some things change and some things stay the same. So on the left, we have the current. On the right, we have the proposed. Then I'll talk more about some other options in here. On the left, the preschool wouldn't change as far as start time, 9:40 now, 9:40 next year. BF Norton School, we had to find one elementary with
not many buses running to be a companion to one of the earlier runs, that was BF. So BF in this model would change. They go from an 8:40 start of the school day to an 8 o'clock start of the school day. That's a big difference for BF. Garvin School, 8:40 now would be 9:10 next year if you did this. Ashton School, 9:10 is 9:10, they're the same. Community School, 9:10 and 9:10, that'd be the same. And Cumberland Hill would go from 9:10 to 8:15. Now, while those are different, in looking at the model, I would say all those L times are in that elementary strike zone, if you will. However, they are different. The bigger challenge came at the middle school level. We had talked about, in our discussion, 7:45 possibly being the kind of like the line in the sand, if you will. The middles were at 7:45 a few years back, so we thought that was kind of the demarcation line. We just couldn't get it there. I talked to Durham again and again about trying to squeeze time out, but we really want to be honest with our schedules. We don't want to give you a time on paper that can't come true in the fall. So these times are honest. We think 7:30 is the best we can get. That's pretty early for a middle schooler. The research, as we know, says the teenagers would benefit from more sleep. I'm thinking that certainly it's the 8th graders, the 7th graders. So in this model, while it's a better overall model, high school 8:15, the high school 4 grades benefit greatly. The middle school takes, I'd say, a half a step back in this model. As a whole model, it is better, but it has some issues with it. First, the middle school concern of 7:30. Also, I should share, in this model, we had to put in a piece where a certain portion of the community, I believe Mendon Road, help me now, Greg, Mendon Road, Angel Road.
We have talking about the no busing zone.
Yes.
So as part of this, the model, in order to get it to just a 3-bus ad, the walking distance would have to change from a 2-mile radius to roughly a 3-mile.
For the high school.
At the high school only. So in the map, what that would be is roughly from the Woonsocket line on Menning Road, all the way down past the high school. That would be on the north side. On the south side, it would be from the high school down to roughly Davenport to Martin Street on the Menning Road side. Some of it would go up like halfway up Angel. It would go up Pound Road a little bit and up West Rentham a little bit as well. So just so you guys can see, because we don't have the map to put up, rough ballpark on what the expansion would be on the no bus zone to the high school.
Right. So in this best model, we had approximately 268 students affected in that 3rd mile at the high school, and that's a concern. So we have the concern for the 3rd milers, I'll say. We have the middle school time being a concern. And then certainly I know some folks would certainly argue the change in time to the L's is concerned, but to me that one doesn't really rise to the level of the 7:30 and the 3rd mile. Having said that, you get the high school 8:15, and that's fantastic for the high school. The question for the committee is the pros and cons of that. The high school gets a great start. The other pieces here, take a hit, if you will. To compare other districts, if you look at Lincoln, Lincoln has a similar fleet to ours with around, I want to say, 2,000 less students, 1,500 less students. The challenge really is back to dollars and cents, folks. We are lean. We're the lowest funded in Rhode Island, and it shows right here. If you want to do this well, we had 8 to 10 buses, and we're done. But we don't have that luxury right now. In this model, we're adding 3, and we'd do a swap in the budget if we did this, take something out for 150 to put this in. So that's really the best we can do. This is it. We've tried every permutation. The only other thing we could do, we looked at, was if 7:30 is too early, we could shift the entire fleet forward. While there's no room between the runs, we could say, okay, 7:40 for the middles, 8:25 for the high school, but then the L's, the late L's are 9:20. Remember last year we had a problem around 9:17, getting out to 9:10? So is that preferable? Do you shift the whole fleet forward to get what you want? But 9:20 was a problem last year, it might be a problem now. So you could go, 7:40, 8:25, 9:20 for the later L's. So this is really the best work. We've looked at this so many ways with Durham and talking to other people. One more thing I should add. We also looked at depot stops. We thought, well, how about the whole high school depot stopped? and we use the elementary schools for the depots, because in the morning no one's there, they go to the 5 Ls, they get on and they go. It works for the morning, unfortunately not for the PM. PM, the Ls are still in session, we can't deploy high school kids onto an elementary campus during the school day, that would not be a good idea. So that was a good idea for the AM. We still have modeled in here with Durham, that 3rd mile, we could depot stop the AM using Ashton and Cumberland Hill, but that doesn't solve the PM problem. It's still a depot stop, it's not a real pickup. So that's the thinking. I can answer any questions you have about Wonders, and Durham's here also to take down notes of any of the things you want us to look at, but that's where we are right now.
Does anyone have questions? No. Okay, Dr. Thornton, can you tell me the approximate cost per bus?
Ms. Bernardo's here from Long Island, tell me $52,000, $53,000 a bus?
53, 54,000.
And in planning the routing outside of really the 3 to 2 mile, would any of the other bus stops change? So at the high school level, let's say, is the same kind of coverage map still occurring?
I believe we have the same coverage map, less that 3rd mile of the no bus is in coverage map right now. I know before my time, there was a model where I think the committee looked at knocking out 400 bus stops one year in the model, but that didn't go anywhere. I know when you rolled that model out. But this model, the bus stops, other bus stops, less than 3rd mile.
Any other questions?
Actually, Dr. Matheson had a couple thoughts.
Sure.
That's okay.
Thank you. I know, Mr. Duffy, appreciate all the extensive research that was centered around the high school information around the change in time. Dr. Thornton called me and talked to me about the change in the middle school time. So I have done research on that end so that we can have a rich discussion around what we've already started. So trying to be balanced, I looked at pros and cons similar to what you discussed. Obviously, with the tiered busing system, there's a 30% cost efficiency across the country. So obviously, with the amount of buses that we're trying to work with, we're going to be running into problems like we are now, with limited funds, limited opportunities for busing. Another positive is that the middle schools, by going to the earlier time, would be supporting the initiatives of the high school, which we want to be a good player in that, especially with the great things that are going on there. And also, we want to continue to increase our proficiencies in those types of things. Also, there is positive research in areas where it shows that middle school students bounce back biologically with their bodies with an earlier time rather than a high school student, as you had mentioned earlier. So there were some of the pros that I looked at. Some of the concerns are similar to a high school student, but it just bears mentioning that we're talking about 11 to 13-year-old kids now getting up. So when you look at places that have changed the times for high school students, when they get a later start time, they tend to go to bed at the same time anyway, so they're getting an extra hour of sleep. Where other places in the middle school will change, they'll go to bed at the same time, but they'll lose the hour, which is one slight concern. Also, with getting up quite early, I was looking at we have the furthest bus stop from McCourt would be Davenport's, which has approximately 30 students-ish there. I've been to that bus stop in the morning and afternoon for a couple of other reasons. And they would probably have to be picked up by 6:45, and which means they probably would have to get there between 6:35 and 6:45. As Durham does work really hard at making sure that the bus times are as accurate as possible, there is some variance, so students have to take that into account. With getting to the bus stop between 6:35 and 6:45, they're going to have to get up anywhere between the hours of 5:45 and sometimes at the latest 6:15. And students who get up later at the 6:15 hour with a nutrition concern may not have the most hearty breakfast, and they tend to pick up bad habits at 11, 12, and 13, drinking caffeine drinks, trying to get a coffee, things that high school students typically would do. Now they're picking up those habits in the middle school possibly. Also, a couple of detrimental effects. Sleep deprivation does have a problem around judgment and insight in the student in middle school. And we are in the middle, so we already have our own little niche going on. And when we have problems with judgment, it's a concern. Also, there's an increase, amazingly, in alcohol and substance abuse. This is all based on research. This isn't Jim Ashton speaking. Also, in the afternoon, there's an increased amount of self-care time where students have to be on their own for quite a bit. And with parents working longer and longer hours to try and compensate for the economic climate, students will be left alone much longer. Nationwide, juvenile crimes are 4 times more likely to occur in the hours after school than they would in the morning or late at night. So afternoon is the biggest problem for juvenile crimes. Also, only 10% of schools nationwide in the middle school stop before 7:30. 7:30 or before. 90% of the nation starts after 7:30. We also have a band program that we cannot support during the school day, which students do come in early in the morning. That would have to move to a 6:30 start for them, which would be a difficult transition for students who are our highest performers in some areas. Also, we have a YMCA program that students take advantage of and parents take advantage of that takes place at BF Norton. Depending on, I didn't have the time when I was doing this research. If we're getting out before BF Norton, where those students would go is a question mark. So it's also a concern. Schools who start at 7:30 or earlier, there's a rapid decrease in academic achievement for middle school students. The rapid increase happens when the school starts from 7:30 and 8 o'clock. The ideal is 7:45. A compromise possibly, which Dr. Thorne and I spoke about, would be the 7:45 time, 7:40 time-ish. But obviously that's the committee's decision to make. But as the middle school principal, it was important that we were able to put all this information on the table as a concern for our parents, constituents. I can entertain any other questions.
I have a question for Durham, I think. I thought Dr. Durham tell me, I know we talked earlier on the phone at one point, what would it take to get us to quarter of 8 at the middle? It's not as simple as it sounds as a web, but is there a generic answer we can talk about now, just kind of conceptually, to get the middles to quarter of 8 with this model?
Everything would have to move, all the schools.
I mean, barring shifting everything 15 minutes, not community 925, in that tier, how much bigger, how many more buses do we have to add? Any sense? I know it's not a simple, it's hard to ask for an intro on the fly, but I know we talked about it maybe a month ago. I want to say when they model it goes like 3 to 5 in that range, that kind of bus change to get that 15 minutes. That's why we're thinking the cost benefit of 5 buses at $260,000 for 15 minutes, probably easier to move the fleet 15 minutes, move the whole town. Then can the L's, the late L's of Ashton, Community, and Garvin, they wouldn't start till 9:25 in the morning. So that's the kind of the trade-off. So
one last piece about the 6:45 in the morning bus stop. It is now going to be May 1st next week, and the sun is starting to crack through. 70% of the school year, those students will be in the dark at a bus stop, 11, 12, 13 years old. That was one other thing I neglected to mention.
Mrs. Teal?
Is there a way to increase the walking distance for the middle schools so that it wouldn't necessarily be a 3 to a 5 bus ad, but maybe we can cut that down so that it's similar to the high school, or to do better depot stopping for the middle school kids so we can get it to a 7:45 start time?
We honestly never looked at the middle school.
I can start with that. I know we talked about depoting earlier in the walking zones. One thing we talked about though was the geography of north doesn't really lend itself to any kind of walking. It's more of a McCord. than north conversation because of where they are. And we could examine it, but I think at that point in the winter, I told them not to model below the high school for the depot because of the age of the kids, but we can certainly look at it.
I guess I personally would rather them start a little later if we can solve the transportation issue more creatively, if there is a solution to it.
Yeah, I am concerned with increasing the walking distance for the middle school children.
So is there a better solution of if you somehow figure out the depoting? So it's not a 3-mile cutoff, but maybe they have to walk a couple blocks to get to a larger bus stop.
For the middle school?
Mm-hmm.
That's something we could consider, yes.
I can also, just one thought on, when we talked about depoting earlier, we had a depot conversation in the winter, and our first conversation was, it's hard to find a place that wants to have a depot stop near it, or a business. Then we deferred to our elementary school being a natural depot, because we own the property and we're all set. But going back to Durham's talk, I know even with BVP and they depot, isn't it still hard to, the challenge still finding the depot place?
Yeah, it's very, very difficult, and we've had a lot of pushback from people in the community when we have, you know, a large depot stop. It becomes, you know, a danger for the children. There's cars parked everywhere, and you know, it blocks traffic and just creates more problems out on the road. And it's difficult to find or to get permission from either area businesses. They may be closed in the morning, but they're not in the afternoon. So we have had difficulties even with BVP. And even after we started this year with BVP, we had to move about maybe 10 to 12 of those stops.
I mean, having thought of this for months now, I think I go back to kind of the compromise idea. Is there a compromise time that would make people feel better? If you did, you know, 7:38 and, you know, the high school 8:23 and the 9:18 for the L's, the late L's. Is there a time that makes people kind of feel, well, for the greater good, it works? You know, I don't know.
So I just want to sum up a little bit. So these are the exact issues we've been struggling with as far as, and Durham has been fantastic. We've thrown so many different ideas and models. I mean, just some crazy ideas, but we're trying anything because this is an issue where it makes sense. There is no reason not to do it except for financial. People always say money can't fix everything. Money will absolutely fix this problem because we could have the middle and high stop at the same time, which makes sense. The research says that's what we should do, but we don't have the money to do it. So there are many negatives associated with this and many positives, and that's the struggle that we as a committee have to determine before we make the vote in the future. So, but again, as Bill said before, this comes back to because we run such a lean bus, because we're the lowest funded in the state, even though we know something is right to do, we can't do it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All set. Any further questions? Next item is old business, discussion and or vote to approve the school start and schedule with Durham School Services. So what we had said earlier was that we were not going to take any action. We were just going to use it as a discussion this evening, and we would not. We would plan on having a subcommittee meeting next Thursday at 7 p.m. We'll follow it by a full committee meeting. I just want to echo Mr. Duffy's comments in the fact that this is, you know, moving the start time to the high school to a more appropriate time for their biological clocks is, you know, obviously research-based and the right thing to do. And what we're constrained with, and what we always seem to be constrained with, is the fiscal impact of that. Other communities certainly have had this struggle, but they have the capability to charge for transportation like they do in Massachusetts, and we don't in Rhode Island. So they can alleviate some of those differences in the financial constraint the students are paying for the busing there. We can't even consider that. And additionally, because we're a community that is both rural and suburban, we're faced with our own unique challenges that way. I do hope that, you know, if the committee has questions, if the committee needs more information, please, you know, Dr. Thornton's office or Mr. Duffy, I'm sure, can answer the lion's share of those, and I certainly appreciate Durham's assistance in this. It sounds like you've been jumping through a lot of hoops to try and build a model that'll work, so thank you for those efforts. So again, next Thursday would be where the school committee would take action on this. Any further discussion on that? No?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Meyer?
Yeah, I have to. I just think that, you know, obviously some of my opinion on this matter has evolved and is still evolving, I guess, at this time. But I mean, the facts are the facts, and they're not going to change next Thursday. We don't have it budgeted. It would force a budget amendment. It would force a policy amendment to the walking distance. I know we're doing everything we can because it's a worthy cause. There's no doubt about that. But they're not going to change. The problems that we have, or the hurdles that we have to climb, are going to be there next Thursday. I just think that, you know, based on, you know, what I'm hearing, you know, from Dr. Masterson, that, you know, and I get the idea we're going to play with another 10 minutes, but I just can't see how that's an option to make it 90-20 at community, and the other changes that have made it. I mean, you know, there's always, I guess there's room for a miracle for the next week, but we're at a place, and I'm a big proponent for it, and you know, the walking distance, some of those things I can get past, but it just doesn't. If there's 90% starting after 7:30, based on some of the other data that Dr. Master, and to get there, we're going to have to. It's just one of those things where I don't know. I think we need to think about getting it done right, and I don't know if, with the constraints that we have, if we could get it done right. So maybe that should just be our goal. If we can find a way, I just don't know if it exists. That's all. It seems to me that it doesn't, and everyone's doing everything they can to find it, but unless it shows up, I think it's clear. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Fiorello?
I agree with Mr. Roder that we can't get beyond the physical aspect of this, but I also can't get beyond asking 268 students to walk between 2 and 3 miles along Minden Road or whatever other road to get to high school. And to say that they'll just have to find a ride or figure it out, I think it's a disservice to the community.
So this is where I get on my soapbox and talk about when are we going to have the conversation about what is it going to take to have a really good school system, because we charged Dr. Thornton with fixing the high school. And, you know, the interview was all about what are you going to fix, how can you fix the high school? And the constraint we're always faced with is the financial one, and it's obvious that that's what many communities are facing. But ours is particularly unique because it is so punitive on this community, and it's punitive to every student. So we now know that all the research points to what you should do for high school kids. The answer's right in front of us, yet the obstacle isn't that Durham can't do it, it's that we can't afford to do it right and do it well. And I sincerely hope that folks at the town level are willing to have this conversation with us. What does it really mean to have a really good school system? What is it going to take? What do we want to have in that? Because at this point, we're constantly constrained by the fact that we can't do more. You know, we've had a presentation this evening about STEM to STEAM, and you know, for light bulbs to go on in kids' heads about technology is in the middle school level is amazing. And I'll just say from my own experience trying to hire 8 engineers over the last 6 months, they're not coming from the US. And to try and find qualified people with science, technology, and mathematic backgrounds, it is a huge challenge. So to get those lights on that early, you know, God love you. I think that is such a great thing. So again, on my soapbox, I want to know when we're going to have a good conversation about what is it going to take to have a great program here.
I guess my comment is I'm not quite ready to throw in the towel on this one yet. I think there's got to be a little more creative thinking about walking distances and depot stops. And I accept that there's an inconvenience to that, but I also believe that for the benefit of the kids, getting them to school when they're not ready to learn really isn't accomplishing much. So the inconvenience to me outweighs the fact that we need our kids ready to learn. And if we know it's as simple as letting them sleep in for an extra hour at the high school level or another 15 minutes at the middle school level, this is a pretty, it's not a difficult decision to make. This is all about improving academic learning for these kids. It's not costing us more in salaries, it's not costing us more in pensions. This is just a very common sense approach to solving part of our problem. And I can't accept that we can't figure out a solution around 15 or 20 minutes. It just, that's just not doing right by these kids right now. That is just not correct. We're the adults. We ought to be able to figure this problem out and put these kids first and their learning first.
Madam Chair, I just make a request that the Thursday that there be an agenda item for a budget amendment, because I understand and I'm not disagreeing with a lot of the statements, but the reality is still the reality. And we have a request. We made a request. We've sent it. And so if we're going to amend our request, then I suggest that it be on the docket. Because if the way to do it is add 8 or 10 buses, and that's the right way to go, then cut something, you know, make it a budget amendment to, because other than that, I get the idea about being creative and stuff, but I think everybody has been doing everything they possibly can do to get there, and we're going to ask them to be more creative. So if we do, and they can't, then we're going to be at the same place we are now, and so we're going to be left with the same decision, which I think is going to be the exact same decision. So I'm just requesting that there be a budget amendment, just on the off chance that a school committee member wants to make an amendment that, you know, would allow it to fit into the current request that has already passed within the committee. Thank you.
I guess part of this, and now I'll go on my soapbox, so come along for the ride. Sometimes that creativity also takes place at the family level, that you have to accept that because we are not well funded, that sometimes families have to step up, and it's not as if we don't ask them to step up to the plate all the time, but I know in other states, you don't get driven to school in a school bus. Your parents or you carpool, or there are states that don't provide transportation. We just in Rhode Island expect an incredibly high level of service, and we can't afford that high level of service, because that high level of service is cutting into our academic programs. So that's great, every kid gets a bus ride to school, but what are you coming to school into? And I'd rather my kids come into a school where they're well prepared, teachers are ready, they've got supplies in the classroom, and me figure out how to carpool with my neighbors to get my kids here if I have to go to a 3-mile walking range. We cannot have our cake and eat it too. So you gotta figure out what you wanna eat. Do you wanna eat really good academic programs, or do you wanna eat really good transportation? And it's really what it's coming down to right now. There are incredibly difficult choices we have to make, and it's going to require creativity on our part, on Durham's part, and on parents' part to accept and understand you are demanding a level of service we can no longer supply, or you're going to have a great bus ride to school, but I can't promise you what's going to be in that school when your kids get there. And I think if you really think hard about it, 10 minutes here or 15 minutes there, or working with your neighbors, or going to a depot stop, and I'm sorry for the 15 minutes of inconvenience in the morning to all the people going to work, but suck it up, because I think it's the right thing to do for the kids finally. And it's time to put their needs first, not the parents' needs, not everybody else's needs, but put these kids first finally.
Mr. Fierro.
Dr. Thornton, are we still expecting 300 high school students needing math intervention next year?
I have the high school principal here, so I'll defer to him.
Are we still expecting 300 high school students needing math intervention next year?
Yes, actually just a bit over that.
Okay, and
102 seniors alone.
my concern is that if we add the 3 buses, we're going to lose the funding for the math interventionists, because it's about the same amount of money.
The math interventions, I understood, were happening right away. So next year we have the intervention literacy in place, so we could handle that for next year.
I can translate. In this schedule, we actually made some numeracy classes in the schedule, but also the budget. I don't know if you heard the last meeting, we actually added in some math interventionists, FTEs, to the middle and high. He's talking about that. What he's saying is we already have a program during the day to schedule kids in extra math and numeracy. That's protected right now in the budget. You're talking about the interventionists, which would also usually help as well.
But Mr. Fierro was speaking of a discussion inside fiscal management that if we were going to go with the current model, the 3-bus ad, that the ad that we had made to the budget for the math interventionists full-time was in the same area, so that because I had proposed a budget amendment that would reduce that back to 0, that we wouldn't add the math interventionists next year, we would put the money here. So that's the actual, that's the reason behind, I believe, Mr. Fierro's question was whether or not that need would still be there, and because I had suggested that as a possible budget amendment. Thanks.
Mr. Duffy.
Thank you. I've tried to withhold my opinion on this issue as far as a vote goes, just because I want to wait until next week. If you ask me every 5 minutes, I can give you a different answer, because I know how important it is, but I know the tremendous problems that this could cause at the same time. So I really go back and forth on which is best to do it. The biggest problem I have with, I'll say, the emotion I'm hearing on this board is it's frustrating from us that we know what we need to do, but we can't do it. We know that this technology needs this school. We can't even get our busing right to get the kids to school at a time when they can learn best when they're awake. And yet, forget about technology if we can't even get the kids to school at a time when they need it. This place is, it's dig into the, I dug into the budget and you look, there isn't any place to cut. There's no line item you can look at and say we can reduce this. Our teachers are average paid in this state. Our administrators are average paid in this state. We're not overpaying for things. They've cut the utility bills, everything across the board. There is no more meat to cut off of this bone. And yet, even with the buses that we're looking to add, which is the right thing to do, the ask that we're looking for from the town council, from the administration, is still above and beyond where we were, just because the cost of everything goes up incrementally, 1% here, 1% there. So we want to fix the high school without the resources to fix it. I understand the administration and the mayor and the town council want to see action at the high school, but I don't know how we can get more blood out of the budget stone from where we are now without more. If we want to see the changes, this proposal in front of us, we know from the research, we will see immediate changes day one with high school students. Now, yes, we don't want to affect the middle school students at all. We don't. So how do we get that immediate fix at the high school like we want? It's money, period. Bottom line, it's money. We could leave the middle school where they are if we had the money to spend on the extra busing for the high school. They want an increase in standardized testing at the high school. I'll tell you where we can get it from. Change the start time. But we need money to do that. Or we're going to cause pain, or we're going to cause changes to the middle school, the extra people walking, and all the other problems we've discussed. I don't want to do that. But I do want to change the time at the high school because it's the right thing to do, and we will see immediate gains in tardies, disciplines, suspensions, standardized tests. All the above will be improved. That's exactly what we all want from our high school. And we can get it. But we can't because we don't have the funds to do it. And sorry, that was on my soapbox, but it's just...
Anyone else? I appreciate all your passion. This is a great debate and dialogue, and I think we're all equally frustrated for probably the same reason. All right, moving on. So, Mr. Marty, you said there would be no discussion or vote this evening on the Envious Swim Club pool proposal at the high school. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair, we've actually withdrawn it in fiscal management.
Thank you. Next item is new business. Discussion and or vote to approve the 2014-2015 school calendar. Dr. DeBark.
Yes, we brought back the calendar for 14-15 for discussion. A couple things in this piece. First, this is predicated on also having a contract with the teachers, because that also is part of the conversation with the calendar, but as far as length of year, if you will, as far as PD days. Also, Bob and I have been talking to Rye at length around the park test. As you know, the park test in the future will be in the spring, in March. Rye has yet to give us the exact test window. We do know it's 20 days. We know it's in March, probably. We know in the 20 days, it's 5 to 9 days for testing, plus those makeup days for kids that are out. So you probably assume 3 weeks are utilized. If the window started in the first week of March, this calendar could be okay. In this calendar, per your last discussion, we have the vacation week, the last part of March, 30-31, in April, 1, 2, and the third is Good Friday, which is actually only 4 work days, if you will. So this is predicated on the park window being where we think it's going to be. We don't know that yet. So I hesitate to have you approve this. We can keep it and kind of we just pull it out again in a month once Rye tells us more. But I don't have anything to add about the Rye, but that's kind of where I thought we were with the park test.
Just a couple of things to add what Dr. Thornton has already said. The testing window has not been set. We do know that it's going to be in the 2014-15 school year. And there are actually 2 parts to the assessment. So there is one phase of the assessment will be given at the, after 75% of the school year is complete, which would bring us to the end of March or so. And the other phase, and there are 2 20-day windows. The other phase would be given sometime in May. So there were actually 2 pieces to this park assessment. And the other thing is the actual amount of time that we're going to require as a district to test all students in grades 3 through 11. This is a little different now than NECAP because we're testing all grades 3 to 11. Depends on on our technology as well, because remember the park is, we need technology, computers to do this assessment. So we're in the process of figuring out how we're going to meet that responsibility as well. So if we, obviously the more computers, the lower the ratio of computers to student, the less time it's going to require to get this assessment testing done. But, if the larger that ratio is, it's going to take more time.
So having said that, if park was where we think it's going to be, and you went with this calendar, you can see we have the PD days inserted in there. We have a 181-day school year. And you can see June, I believe, 9. June 9 there is your projected last day. Any questions on the calendar?
Anyone? Mr. Duffy.
Just when I noticed the Christmas break, on this one it would begin Christmas Eve through, but I believe the one that we just approved had 2 full weeks, but it looks like this one isn't including that Monday and Tuesday. I was wondering if you could give me the thought process behind that portion of it.
It's truly as the calendar falls, how we roll these things out. I think the last one, we even had the 23rd out, then we started last year, next year's. So I think it's really how it falls, but in this one, it's just how it fell. It was just how we did it. Nothing really,
Madam Chair?
Mr. Muller.
Does it make any sense to move it, move passage subject to the park testing requirement and collective collective bargaining agreements?
then you can always bring it back to amend it later, or do you want to just, you can certainly amend it anytime you want. This is 2 years, this is very proactive of you. This is a ways out, you can certainly tweak this at any point.
Is there any value in us actually passing it before you guys on tonight, or?
For us, I don't have any big need for this. You can certainly table it, you can pass it. If something changes dramatically, I can bring it back and tell you, stop the presses, the park test has been moved, and we have to adjust. So that's fine. If you want to pass it, you certainly can.
Pleasure of the committee.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion that we table this for 60 days.
I second the motion.
So a motion to table by Mr. Demotica and a second by Mr. Salvatore. Any further discussion on tabling? All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries 7-0 with the chair voting yes. So we're going to table it, Dr. Thornton, for about 60 days. If you get information on park and negotiations, please bring it back to us.
Very good.
Thank you. Mr. Duffy?
I think the only benefit we would have had to passing it is that we're making a clear statement to the community and the surrounding communities that we intend to move to a March vacation, eliminating the February and April, just to make that clear. Because there is, since we've been discussing this over the past few weeks, more and more communities there's more rumbling. So I think if they know that it's just not talk in theory, that we're very serious that we are going to move this direction, that I think that's the important statement that we want to get out on this.
Actually, on that note, I've heard of 3 other communities saying they want us to know they're going to in 2 years. So people are telling me they're going to do it too.
Good to know. Just got to figure out the park schedule. Mr. Mitchell?
Yeah, Madam Chair, when in my discussion with the person that I talked to at RIDE yesterday, she indicated that they are, getting contacted more about the possibility of having, a vacation in March and eliminating the February and April. So I think they are anticipating that this is going to be something that happens in more districts.
That's great. Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, so next item on the agenda is discussion and or vote to amend policy AA, school district legal status, name and boundaries. This is to you.
Thank you. This was in policy the other day. This is simply housekeeping. Currently, this policy refers to the Cumberland School Department as the Town of Cumberland School Department. It's not our legal name. Our legal name is actually Cumberland School Department. So on a 2-0 vote, we have moved to amend the policy so that the first sentence reads, the official name adopted by the Town of Cumberland for its school district is the Cumberland School Department, and its boundaries are blah, blah, blah. So I would move passage of this amended policy to reflect the correct legal name of the Cumberland School Department.
Mrs. Teal moves passage of policy AA, school district legal status, name and boundaries. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mutter. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is discussion and or vote to approve employee contracts for secondary assistant principals. Dr. Thornton?
Yes, I'm on the vein of improving the high school. One thing I was looking to doing is truly examining our leadership structure at the high school. Our structure was very traditional, and while you had a principal and vice principals, oftentimes the VPs were mired in discipline in not getting to the teaching and learning which they need to get to all the time. Models I've seen Other more progressive would have a principal, 2 assistants of teaching and learning, and 2 deans under that. That's where we're going. So in that vein, we did advertise and got many applicants. I can tell you 2 applicants stood out in interviews from the rest clearly. And we have one here this evening. If you could just stand for us as we talk about you. We have Jessie Butash. There she is. Bob was actually on the interview team in round 1, so Bob can say a few words first, and I'll continue.
Yes, on behalf of the interviewing team, in fact, a few of my colleagues who are on that committee are here this evening. We did have an opportunity to interview a number of talented people, and there's no question that Jessie really stood out. The goal of creating this model that you all, we appreciate your supporting the model, was to really focus our attention on teaching and learning. As Dr. Thornton said, the traditional model is having vice principals or assistant principals who spend a great deal of their time dealing with discipline issues. So even if the assistant principals had planned to do work related to teaching and learning, many times that is disrupted because of discipline issues. And when you have 1,300 or 1,400 or 1,500 students in a school, that can be a pretty time-consuming thing. The beauty of this model is we will have, in addition to Jessie, who was very impressive, and Adolfo, we'll also have the principal, 3 administrator level people who will be totally focused on teaching and learning. So we're really excited about implementing this model, and we are really excited that we have Jessie on the team and Adolfo on the team. She is highly skilled, and the work that she's doing now and the work that she has done in her prior experiences have prepared her well to do this work. So we are really excited to have her on the team.
One last thing to add, Jessie, her latest engagement has been with RIDE as an induction coach. So to translate, she really is an expert at teaching and learning, working with teachers on teaching and learning. So we're getting an excellent candidate here in Jessie. So with that, I'd like to recommend Jessie Butash for approval.
Mr. South, we have a recommendation for Dr. Thornton, the pleasure of the committee.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Leonard.
We're on the employee contracts first.
Yes, we are on employee contracts, and the first contract would be for Jessie Butash.
Okay, both contracts with the assistant principals were part of fiscal management this evening, and we're prepared to make an amendment on those contracts on page 3, 3.4, health and dental insurance. We want to add on the 6th line down after CTA percentage, the words "if greater." So I move to amend both contracts to reflect that change.
Thank you, Chairman Leonard. Does the committee want to take the approval of these contracts all at once or individually? Mr. Salvatore?
Thank you. My question, Madam Chair, is for Dr. Thorne. Dr. Thorne, can you explain also to the audience what you explained earlier on what the reason is? How you're stacking the 2 assistant principals? In terms of you're going to have 2 focusing on education and then 2 focusing on...
Sure. In this new model, we're trying to optimize our teaching and learning capacity at the high school. So we have a principal, we have 2 APs of teaching and learning, and most of their day is teaching and learning. Also with that, as you'll hear later, I told you, I think prior, we're also changing our department chair structure as well, where those folks will be teaching 1 and also working with the teachers directly. So we're really trying to optimize our experts with the teachers working on teaching and learning. So we're actually gaining more time with administrators and experts in the classroom and teachers as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a discussion and a vote to approve employee contracts for secondary assistant principals. Chairman, Mr. Leonard.
Yeah, just for clarification, and We're not appointing the people at this section. Is that section D? Am I not correct?
Yeah.
So we're on C, which would be the contracts themselves, which were in front of fiscal management this evening, and Mr. DeMonica made a motion aside fiscal management, which I've just made, which would be line 6, would be to add the words "if greater." I moved passage and would appreciate a second.
Second, Mr. DeMonica, thank you. Thank you very much. We're very enthusiastic about the high school. So maybe we're jumping the gun a little bit. All right, so I have a motion and a second to amend. Is it both contracts?
It is, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to take both contracts at one time? Or do you want to approve them individually?
I'd like to do it both at the same time.
That's terrific, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, that motion carries 7-0 with the chair voting yes.
Madam Chair. I'd like to move passage of the employee contracts of the secondary assistant principals as amended.
So we have a motion by Mr. Mutter. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mrs. Teal. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, chair voting yes. That motion carries 7-0. All right, next item, discussion and or vote to approve the appointment of secondary assistant principals. Assistant Principal 1, Dr. Thornton, I believe, is Ms. Butash.
Yes, and we have spoken about her. I'm recommending her tonight for approval.
Excellent.
Passage, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mutter and Mr. DeMonica. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries 7-0 with the chair voting yes. Congratulations. Next item on the agenda.
Actually, we have our second assistant principal could not be here this evening, but I wanted to just, he hasn't really been approved here officially.
Understood. So let's see if we can get a motion in a second.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I move passage.
Oh, wow, this is great. So a motion by Mr. Mutter and a second by Mr. Salvatore and Mr. DeMonica. Dr. Thornton, any discussion? Dr. Thornton?
Just very briefly, Adolfo hails from Davies. He's the Social Studies Department chair. He's also a content expert. Happy to have.
Terrific. So
Madam Chair, I
yes.
just want to point out these contracts don't start till July 1st, 2013.
Thank you, Mr. DeMonica. All right, so we have a motion and a second, a couple of seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Chair votes yes, that motion carries 7-0. So congratulations to Mr. Costa as well. Costa, that name's very familiar.
No relation.
No relation. Next item on the agenda is personnel recommendations. Mrs. Vogel, no recommendations this evening, thank you. Comments from the public, would anyone in the public wish to speak? Yes? If you could come right up to the microphone. If you could just state your name.
Hi, I'm Renee Howley. I live in the community school area. So I actually came to make a comment about the proposed schedule, but in talking about the start times, I do just want to mention, I hear a lot of talk about the studies around high school kids. I'd be interested to hear about elementary school kids being up at 6 o'clock in the morning and not starting classes till almost 9:30. You know, my kids are up and raring to go, and I think by 9:30 they've lost their energy. You know, they're not ready to sit in a classroom. Not only that, my son will have been at preschool care for 2 hours with opportunity to get into trouble. And that just seems a crazy, crazy late start time for elementary school kids. The 9-10 concerns me. As far as the school calendar goes, as a family with 2 working parents, as well as friends who are teachers in Cumberland and have schools in outside school systems or vice versa, I'm very concerned about the coverage of vacations. I'm going to have a child in Cumberland and a child at Blackstone Valley Prep. I will have over 5 weeks of vacation and end of school year coverage that I have to cover, which will use essentially all of our vacation time and allow no time for a family vacation. And I understand school is important, family time is important as well. So unless the state moves to this new alternative schedule, I think it's going to be detrimental to families who have to cover all of that time if they have kids in 2 different systems, 2 different schools, or they have kids in other school systems, or kids in this school system and work in other school systems. So I think there's just more that needs to be considered there before that vote is taken. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Luann Broadmeadow. I teach English at McCourt Middle School. I'm also the English as a Second Language Coordinator for the District of Cumberland. I have to agree with the last young lady. Our little kids are the ones who are ready to be in school early in the morning. Middle schoolers before 7:30 are the most miserable creatures on the face of the earth. And if you have to face 20 or 30 of them in a classroom, you readily start to understand they're not ready to learn at that hour. We're going to have more tardies. We're going to have more truancy, because although it sounds like a great idea to have parents responsible for getting their kids to school on time, a lot of our parents leave before their children are even on their way to school. Parents leave for work at 6 a.m. Those middle schoolers are on their own to get on that bus. If they're expected in the winter to walk long ways to get to a bus, it's not going to happen. These are young kids between the ages of 11 and 15. The studies that you were talking about from Stanford University and from the Mayo Clinic and from the National Association of School Psychologists all agree that kids between the ages of 11 and 18 need that extra time. If we can think of a way to get the little ones into school early, let the older ones sleep a little bit later, that would work well. My other question is, why do we have staggered start times at the elementaries? Is it a busing issue?
Money.
Because here's the problem. I'll be honest, as ESL coordinator for the district, if I could get out to my elementary schools early, I would be able to reach a lot more students on a much more timely manner. Something to think about.
Thank you. Anyone else? Rep. McLaughlin?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the school committee. The host just tonight passed a bill in reference to the superintendent and the administration. Mandatory fire drills, 15. So I know you probably want to work on a schedule to, you're already in compliance, but I just wanted to reiterate that, this was passed by the House tonight. I'm informed by the principal of McCourt Middle School, you received the 2 jersey barriers, or you're going to have them. So we took care of that. There's a lot going on in HEW in reference to education, kneecap scores and everything else. So I'll keep you posted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also wanted to add that on April 30th, 2013 at 1 p.m. in room 35 in the State House, there's a bill to accelerate the funding formula for education. Please come and be heard. If not, contact your rep. It's a very important bill that would potentially provide additional funds to Cumberland, and that bill is sponsored by our own reps, Ackerman and Macbeth. Anyone else wish to speak? Next item. Oh.
Sorry. Public speaking is not my forte, so I apologize if I sound a little wavy. Mr. Duffy, I think you've done some great research in regards to supporting the high school in the new start time. Mrs. Keel, I think you've got some great points as well. I'm one of those blessed parents who has 3 children, 1 of each, elementary, middle, and high school. All 3 of them would be affected by this potentially. So my request would be is that, and forgive me because I forget his name on the end, would be that to his point, we do this the right way, not the wrong way. That we do it with the 10 buses that we need, because that's the right way to do this. I can tell you my son in high school, yes, he would be a much better performer at 8:25 in the morning. As far as my daughter in middle school, I fear for her safety to have to walk 3 miles when there's sexual predators out there. That's the world that we live in. I work for a great company. I can't go to my company and say, school committee made a decision. Is it okay if I come in at 10 instead of 9 when I'm expected to be here? Because as a parent, I have to make my children a priority. They are my priority. Of course they are. I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't be supporting the F. Norton Library with trying to get grants to build it and make it better. So I'm as equally frustrated as a parent as you guys are as a committee. I think that you can reach out to the community. I think the community would support an 8:25 high school start, but I don't think we'd support it with the compromise to younger children. So just take that into consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else? Next item on the agenda is school committee comments, school liaison reports. Okay, I guess we've exhausted ourselves this evening. Dr. Thornton, no executive session this evening? Very funny, thank you. I need a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. DeMonica. Mr. Salvatore. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. That motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned at 9:32.